Only problem is when you're coming from Buckland, you can't see it because of the tree.
Please join me in our prayer and our pledge. Our Father, who art in heaven,
Hallowed be thy name,
thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May we have the council member roll call, please?
Mr. Powell?
Here.
Mr. Gertz?
Here.
Mr. Lynn?
Here.
Mr. Albrecht?
Here.
Mr. Lindeman?
Here.
Mr. Fischescher?
Here.
Mrs. Edichico? Here.
Unless there's any objection, the minutes for the council meeting on September 7th, the regular session, are approved as distributed. Those minutes are approved. I'm going to go out a little bit out of order here. We'll do audience participation after we introduce our guest speaker and her guest. Our guest speaker is Miss Linda Fitzgerald. Will you step up and introduce your guest? And
Good evening,
Thank you.
Mayor, President, Council, and staff, and audience. Over the past several years, the city, the Port Authority, the state of Ohio, and Hamilton County have made great progress to develop and begin implementing a strategy to facilitate redevelopment of the former Dow chemical site. And we are going to come up with a new name for that. So we won't be calling it that for much longer. Right, Laura? We're moving in the right direction. But recently we added another partner to our team, and that is Nair Properties. And they will be the project developer. And Jeff is here, Shemat is here, and he will be available for questions after the presentation by the port. And then also joining our partnership is the Reading Community City Schools, which recently approved a tax increment financing agreement to help fund the high development costs that are associated with brownfield sites. During this process, the Port of Cincinnati has been a steadfast and very helpful partner. And I especially want to acknowledge Melissa Johnson, who helped shepherd this project since its inception. Melissa has accepted a position elsewhere, and I am sure she will be equally successful there. But I'm sure some of you are wondering, where's Melissa tonight? Now, the good news, though, is we are honored to have the president and the CEO of the port with us tonight, Laura Brunner. And with Laura is Industrial Development Associate Roy Vias. And they are here to give council what will be their fourth update on the project. And you will see that great advancement has been made since we last met, I think, through the Zoom meeting with Melissa. And so at this point, I'm just going to get right to it and ask Laura to please join us here at the podium, or however the two of you want to give the presentation. Thank you, Bob, for the computer, or for the laptop.
You need to pull that down.
Good evening. It's very nice to be with all of you. We've enjoyed our partnership thus far with Reading, and I will start by saying I'm looking forward to groundbreakings and ribbon cuttings. Those are much more fun than project updates, so it'll be fun to be together out with some dirt and shovels in the future. I'm here tonight to give you a brief update to help explain why this does take so long. This is a very complicated project. All public-private partnerships are necessarily more complicated, but this truly was a project that required us to have an integration between the public sector and the private sector. We have a number of different project partners on this. As Linda mentioned, the state of Ohio through Jobs Ohio, Hamilton County, your community, as well as the private sector investment. We've invested funds that we've raised from the private sector for the acquisition of the property. So it's a complex capital stack, if you will. And one of the things that we found on this project, and the other properties that we've done inside of our industrial strategy, we wait until we get it completely pad ready and then we market it to the private sector. But in this case, because of the extensive demolition that's required and remediation and the complexity and cost of that, we sought out a development partner earlier in the process because we really need to know where the built environment is going to be in the future so we can manage the costs of the remediation and demolition, so we're not spending money that we don't need to. You don't have to do the same kind of remediation for a parking lot, for example. So Jeff Shamit and our properties have been eyeing this property for some time as well. So they really were great partners for us. They know the property very well. And we're working with them, along with our environmental attorney and environmental consultant, on a variety of tasks. I think you understand that our mission inside of our industrial strategy is to bring manufacturing back to Hamilton County. We've lost 100,000 manufacturing jobs in our county since 1967, and I want to get back as many of them as we possibly can. And this is the way we do it. I mentioned the funding partners that we have for this project. We also have development and construction partners.
Should we be down there to see the
I know,
sign?
I was hoping it was showing on the other side of the screen as well.
But Laura, we're incredibly thankful you guys are a part of
Oh,
this.
well,
So,
thank you. I know,
want you to
I've mentioned your letter to me many times in different audiences as an example of our partnership with communities. Nobody has sought our participation out as much as you have, Mayor.
Well, thanks. I wanted everybody to hear that
Mm-hmm.
because, as Linda has told, this could have sat for years and years and
Yes.
years, and we're appreciative.
Well, and like so many of these difficult sites, if we didn't get involved, they would never achieve their highest and best use and would stay as, truck parking lots or auto storage or something silly. And so we share your conviction to bring back jobs to this site. So as Linda mentioned, Nair Properties has joined us as our development partner, and in the future we'll have a number of different contractors, from demolition contractors to the general contractors that build the buildings in the future. In the future, we'll be marketing this site. We're not quite there yet. We work in partnership with Ready Cincinnati, which is the Jobs Ohio affiliate. So in addition to us having a broker, Colliers, working to sell the property, we'll also be marketing it nationally and perhaps internationally as well. So this shows you where we are. We're 2 years into a 4.5-year timeline. I know that seems like an incredibly long period of time, but you'll note that at the end of the 4.5 years, it's the completion of the phase 2 construction. We're going to be putting pressure on Nair Properties to make sure that that happens. Right now, you can see where we are in preparations of plans and specs, working then to get a demo contractor. We'll move quickly into that February to April 22 time frame. Virtually at the same time, we move into that purple at the bottom. We're going to be working with our environmental consultants and Nair Properties on what happens to the dirt and the civil engineering and environmental work. At the same time, we start planning the layout for the future. To paint that pretty picture of what we'll have in the future, this is Nair Properties' plan. This is what we were waiting for before we could move forward on our demolition and remediation. And to remind you, we have very strict goals with regard to the number of jobs per acre, the salary of those jobs, and the capital investment. We are anti-warehouse. We want manufacturing jobs, and we want them to be a high number per acre, and we want an average of $65,000 salary. The data that we have from working with Ready shows that that's possible, and an advanced manufacturing environment. The location you have here in Reading is working with Ready in Reading is ideal for, to be able to achieve that. So you can see here in the future, our goal is to get you $500,000 a year in income tax in the future. So this is my last slide to talk about what we're doing next. And there's a lot of very detailed work. You're lucky to have Anuroy as part of our team, working hand in hand with Nair Properties and our environmental consultant to make this happen. So it's finalizing our civil engineer, releasing bid specs then for the site-wide demo, as well as initial remediation steps, what the scope of work is going to be for that, choosing then the contractor to do that scope of work. We've got a number of environmental restrictions on the site, so we continue to work with our environmental attorney on finalizing the RCRA orders. and then we'll get final approval from Jobs Ohio. Jobs Ohio has made both a grant to the port as well as a loan to Nair Properties. So that's a really big accolade for Reading to have, is to have that level of commitment from Jobs Ohio in both a grant and a loan. Obviously, after I'm finished here tonight, you're going to talk a little bit more about your TIF, which is going to provide some of that critical funding that's needed. That's a sophisticated tool. I'm very happy that you're willing to do this and your school district is willing to partner with us to make that happen. That's what's going to allow this site to turn into advanced manufacturing. And then we'll start actually moving dirt and depending on like whether the dirt is dirty or not, we'll determine when we're out there with shovels and a party, but there will be shovels and a party at some point in the future. So I'm happy to answer questions. Technical questions I'll send to Jeff and Anuroy. Easy questions for me.
They heard this 4 times.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry if I didn't have anything new and exciting in here, but.
You folks have been extremely responsive in keeping us up to
Yeah.
date. and keeping
Well, this will be one of our best case studies because I don't think it gets more complicated than this.
Welcome to Reading.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to show these before pictures, for eternity, and I can't wait to have an after picture to go with it.
Can you go back to the elevation plan?
Yes.
Where would the traffic flow be into and out?
Jeff or Anuroy?
Should I go to the microphone?
Yeah, come on up, Jeff.
Yep.
This is Jeff Shamit.
Good evening, everybody. Yes.
Director for Nair.
Jeff Shamit with Nair Properties, and I'm pleased to be here as well. We're excited about the opportunity and about being involved in the project. So we probably should have included an aerial that zooms out a little bit further than this, but the primary access point will be off that the western side there, the left side, the main access point, which we know that the city has put funds in. Riesenberg, correct.
Yes.
So the city's obviously put funds into that in the past and has really improved that, which helps from from an access and also from a marketing standpoint, because prior to that, as you well know, it was not so nice. So that really cleans up that access so we can show it to end users and ultimately be used for access to the site. The other access on the eastern side, kind of on the southeastern corner, will remain, but it'll be more of kind of a secondary access. That kind of goes back through that little neighborhood in there. So that'll remain, but the primary access will be the west side, the Riesenberg access point.
So that bottom left-hand corner, that's the field house and the swimming pools that are white items? Okay.
Yeah, that's correct.
That's the phase one.
In the front property, we would hope wouldn't have any trouble.
Yeah.
We'll hope.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Brenda, you don't have slides, so council can
Thanks for
return if they
coming
want to their
Absolutely,
seats.
absolutely.
Not good for my road.
Almost. It is, but you have to like bring it down and then try to. I can't reach that. Lights were really up there.
I guess for, just to fill some people in that may not be aware, although I think most people are, one of the big challenges here is it was about 60, 70 years a Tier 1 chemical facility. And I think that makes the project that much harder than
Yes.
than an ordinary site. And has a long history going back, to late 40s,
Yes,
and
right.
a challenge
It's good to
indeed.
be reminded of that.
Oh, yeah.
Hopefully, we're learning from that history now and moving in the right direction for the, to sustain the city into the future. So now what we are going to talk about, and our speaker, again, is not a stranger to you. She has been here to talk to you about TIF 101, and she is here tonight understanding that the schools, the Reading City Community Schools, have already approved this TIF. That is, by statute, they are authorized, we're authorized to send notice out to them, and they then take action. And they did approve it. And so now it is your turn. And Brenda will be here to discuss the TIF, answer any questions that you still have. And then I will very humbly ask that you consider adopting the legislation, waiving the second, is it the second and third reading? That's it, yeah. So you can see we're ready to move forward, move ahead, and this is the last step in that process to allow us to help raise money for that almost $38 million in funds that are needed to undertake this complicated project. So I will now ask Brenda Weimer of Dinsmore. She is our, come on up, Brenda. She is no stranger to you. You've seen her on many projects before, and I'm awfully glad to have her on our team. I don't know what I would do without her.
We all don't, Brent.
Flounder. Flounder. Thank you.
Good evening. And, as Linda said, you have the TIF ordinance in your package tonight. That's the ordinance to approve the tax increment financing exemption. As we discussed the last time, if the TIF is approved, it exempts the property taxes, and they are replaced with service payments in lieu of taxes that are then used to pay for the infrastructure cost, which in this case is the demolition and environmental remediation costs, or a portion of those costs. You have provided notice to the school, which is required under the statute, and the schools must approve before you can approve a TIF that is 30 years and 100% exemption. So the schools have been notified, they have discussed this, and they have approved it. And there is a compensation package for the school district as part of the plan and the financing structure. So if the TIF is approved tonight by council, then what will happen in the future is that the city will, through another document at a future point in time, assign those revenues over to the Port Authority, because the Port Authority will be the entity that actually issues any debt associated with the project to pay for the environmental remediation. So the city will not be asked to actually issue its own debt to pay for this. The port is going to be the debt issuer. You will have no financial responsibility other than to transfer the service payments over to the port or their trustee. The school compensation will come out of that, and depending on how the documents are structured, either you'll pay the school before you send the money, or you'll send it all and the port will pay, or their trustee will pay, and then the remainder will be available for the bond. So you'll have no risk to any of your other city funds for the project, just the service payments, and they'll just be assigned over when the port is ready to issue the bonds. So does anybody have any questions about what's in front of you tonight or what's going to happen in the future?
Mr. Lindeman.
I just received this yesterday. There's 18 pages here. I've never, as far as I remember, and my memory's not that good either, I don't think I've ever been involved with a TIF. So if you could explain some things about the service payment and the comp packages and that sort of thing, I'd appreciate it.
Okay, so the service payments are imposed by virtue of a Department of Tax Equalization application form that will be filled out for the site and sent to the county auditor requesting the exemption under this particular statute in compliance with the statute and the ordinance. Then the county auditor and the county treasurer process that form, send it up to the state. The tax commissioner has to approve it. They send it back to the county auditor, and that officializes the exemption. Then once the exemption is official, the taxes will be replaced with service payments to the property owner in the same amount. So unlike an abatement where the property owner doesn't pay their taxes or a portion of the taxes, the property owner will continue to pay the same amount as they would have with or without the exemption. But then those payments are all sent to the city of Reading instead of to all of the underlying taxing entities. And all of that money becomes available for school compensation and public infrastructure improvements. It can't really be used for anything else.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Mr. Gertz.
First of all, thank you, Brenda. I too, like Don, just got it yesterday. As I mentioned to you when we come in, first of all, I want to thank the Port Authority and Nair and for all the hard work. And Linda, certainly, I know you've done a great job working through this and getting this accomplished. And I'm very pleased to see, and it's my ward, so I'm hoping that this comes to fruition in the time period that we anticipate, which is we're halfway there, I guess, 2 more years. Although the reference back to Carlisle Chemical and all those companies, they were very fine employers. They just were in a different era, not knowing, or maybe knowing, but not expecting problems. So we do live in an era where I think environmental concerns are much more vivid, and we want to make sure that we don't have any of these issues. But I don't want to criticize a former employee company that, I mean, the company that employed many people. I do have a question. What is the period of time for the TIFs? Now, I think last time you spoke to us, it had periods of years. It could be 30 years. It could be 20 years. It could
Right. So this one is going to be 30 years,
So it's a 30-year period.
100% exemption.
Okay. And then how much is the compensation to the school going to be on this one?
Okay, school compensation is structured as a percentage of their millage. And that's because you have to also compensate the joint vocational school in a like manner. So the Reading City School District and Great Oaks will receive 35.5% of their millage times the exempted property valuation.
So they'll get a little more than a third back of what's in the TIF, the money that'll be reimbursed through this system, is that right?
Correct.
So there, and that goes to the vocational school as well as Reading Community Schools, is that correct?
Correct. Now, the vocational school has a, substantially smaller millage
Yeah.
amount, so they'll get, a
What is our
third of.
millage? I think it's 76 or something per thousand, I think, with the school system.
With the school, right, and Great Oaks is like 2.7, so it's correspondingly smaller.
So
But
the-
yes, they'll each get 35.5% of their millage.
So they're not suffering as a great consequence, but we're getting a great, more improved valuation when this thing is accomplished. And again, thank you for what you're doing. I hope it all comes to fruition in a timely way. And Brenda, you've been doing this for, I think, what are you now, almost 45, so I bet you've been doing this a few years, so.
Oh, thank you
I
so
have
much.
confidence. I'm confident that this ordinance, and this is going to be, although I admit I haven't read it completely, I went through it pretty quickly today. I would be fully in support of trying to get it accomplished this evening. If Linda wants it to finish, I guess we get it. She's been around here a couple of years too, almost 10 now, so.
So I'll hit just a couple of highlights on the ordinance then. So the ordinance approves the exemption at 30%, or excuse me, 30 years and 100%. It approves the school compensation. It authorizes the safety service director to sign the compensation agreement with the school district, which has already been signed by the school district. It authorizes the safety service director to sign any documents that are necessary to effectuate the service payments being paid by the property owner. It's likely that in the future there will be a cooperative agreement between the city and the Port Authority and Nair Properties when they get closer to bonding. That will be authorized by a separate ordinance in the future. This just authorizes the TIF exemption itself, the school compensation agreement, and then any documents that are necessary to effectuate the service payments being paid by the property owner. And it requires the clerk to send a copy of the ordinance to the county and the state. And it says that the city will comply with the state's reporting requirements for a TIF.
Okay. I think it's a very good example. There's been some question about the city and the school board working together. Well, this is a prime example of what can be done. We're working together, the council, I'm assuming, I know I'm going to vote for it, but I think it's a prime example of us working together. And the other thing I think the citizens should understand, this doesn't create any indebtedness directly upon the city itself or
Correct.
its ability to bond other projects or do anything else. Is that correct?
Correct, since as I spoke, the port's gonna issue the bonds, you're not gonna issue any, they're gonna be on their balance sheet. Not only are you not fiscally responsible for the debt other than transferring the service payments, but it doesn't count against any of your debt limitations for future projects that you may have as a city.
Thank you.
I appreciate that, Mr. Gertz. That answers my second question better. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? I'd like to go ahead and ask council to make a motion to move at least this one ordinance in the agenda to the current time.
I'll make
a motion.
I'll second it.
Motion made by Mr. Lindeman, seconded by Mr. Fischescher, to move the ordinance for the TIF to be read at this time and voted on. So can you go ahead and read that ordinance?
Got to take a roll call.
Oh, yeah.
It's not just Randy and I, even though we
Yeah,
think so.
we have.
I know the answer. I'm sorry. I'm
Sometimes
getting
the
ahead.
ponytail gets a little
Motion made by Mr. Mr. Lindeman, second by Mr. Fischescher, to move that. I'll take a roll call.
Mr. Powell.
Yes.
Mr. Gertz.
Yes.
Mr. Lynn.
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht.
Yes.
Mr. Lindeman.
Yes.
Mr. Fischescher.
Yes.
And Mrs. Edichico.
Yes.
It's official. So go ahead and read that ordinance, please. Just the title.
Are you sure?
Thank
We got time, I mean.
That's good.
Thanks for more,
Good
right?
idea.
Oh, boy. Okay, sorry. An ordinance declaring improvements to parcels of real property located in the city of Reading, Ohio, to be a public purpose under section 5709.40B of the Ohio Revised Code, 2000 West Street, TIF, exempting such improvements from real property taxation, authorizing the execution of a tax incentive agreement and a service or development agreement, and such other documents as may be necessary in establishing a tax increment equivalent fund.
I'll make a motion to suspend the second and third reading.
Second.
Motion made by Ms. Edichico, seconded by Mr. Albrecht to excuse the second and third reading. Roll call.
Mr. Powell?
Yes.
Mr. Gertz?
Yes.
Mr. Lynn?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
Mr. Lindeman?
Yes.
Mr. Fischescher?
Yes.
Mrs. Edichico?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Motion to adopt.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Fischescher, seconded by Mr. Lynn to adopt the ordinance for the TIF. Roll call.
Mr. Powell?
Yes.
Mr. Gertz?
Yes.
Mr. Lynn?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
Mr. Lindeman?
Yes.
Mr. Fischescher?
Yes.
Mrs. Edichico?
Yes.
The ordinance is adopted in the ordinance number.
2021-30R.
Thank you for your steadfast
Congratulations.
support. It's going to be a fun ride, I assure you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Julie,
so much,
for all your
council.
hard
Thank
work,
you.
Linda.
Thank you, everyone who came.
Thank you, sir.
All right, all right, all right.
Thank you, Brenda.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Audience participation, anyone who would like to address council, please step up to the microphone, state your name and address. Then, if there's no audience participation, reading of any communications?
No, sir.
Could I comment on a?
Yes,
couple
go right ahead, Mr.
Audience here.
Yes.
Pat and Tracy Orman here tonight. Not only day in, day out do they help our city by picking up litter, but also in picking up recycling things just day in and day out. And at Reading's huge football game against Wyoming last Friday, I know they were there till at least, 9:30. cleaning up after the game, doing another awesome task for our city, and we can't thank you enough, can't recognize you enough, and appreciate it. Effort above and beyond, so.
Yeah, and it's.
I agree, totally.
Doing the work is the one thing, but setting that good example, I think eventually that's gonna be the real legacy of what you've done, so.
It was nice to hear the comments again. The facility was clean before the night was over. An awesome thing for a crowd like we had for Wyoming, and
Yep.
thanks a million.
Mr. Lindeman.
Awesome,
Mr.
awesome.
Lindeman.
Can I comment on that?
Yes, yes.
Also, Sabrina, I can't remember the two people, I should, but the lady and gentleman that were responsible for the recycling bins down at St.
Yeah,
Peter
the
and
Xander
Paul's.
family did the September Fest this year, the
Xander.
Xander family.
Thank
Yeah,
them, too.
Appreciate it. And
And
it's
then,
all due to the initiative of a couple of people.
Yep, and then Pat and Tracy also picked up to do the Fall in Love bridal show tomorrow evening in the district to help with that, and then also Running Scared in October. So it's just really awesome what our citizens are doing to help us.
Thank you.
Mr. Albrecht.
Just a point, the ordinance we just passed was given the number 30R. It should not, there should not be an R on that. It's not a
I'm
resolution.
sorry. 30.
Thank you, Mr. Albrecht, for staying calm and thinking.
He's in trouble now, but
Thanks, Dad. No problem.
he'll deal with that after the meeting, right?
It'd be an icy evening on Old Wood Drive.
No, he's allowed to correct me. Nobody else is allowed.
Nobody else would have questioned that.
There's no executive session scheduled. Any other business that, go ahead, Mr.
I'll be in deep trouble. Our 32nd Annual Settlement Day Dinner's coming up Friday, October 22nd. I have tickets here. I believe they're $15. It's not on the ticket. But anyway, for those of you who don't know, our Reading Historical Society is an incredible organization that's been here quite a few years here now. A lot of people put a great effort into it. And this year, Don and Rose Lindeman and Derek Leach and Bertie Schulte will be recognized, as well as Jim Lichtenberg, who passed away, who put his heart and soul not only into our city, but into our historical society, and Cindy Roth, who passed away as well here recently after she worked so hard the last couple of years with her husband to do an unbelievable book on all of the World War I veterans from the city of Reading here. An incredible book, I think 500 and some pages. Great effort. So anyway, I have tickets. There's plenty to be had. It'll be at the Field House again. Social hour begins at 5:30, dinner 6:30, program 7:30 against the Historical Society. And also the reminder, Benson Street closes tomorrow right around 5 o'clock. It'll be closed till at least 11 p.m. for the Fall in Love event for our Reading Bridal District, a huge event here in our city. And we just ask for everybody to, there will be alternate routes and detours, and please be careful.
Mr. Lindeman.
I'm going to go out on a limb here. Bo, wasn't it you that kind of got the ball rolling for buying that property at the Historical Society, or was it?
I don't think Bo had much to do with that one. No, that was Jim Lichtenberg and myself, and Denny pretty well pushed to get that back in the day.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I just thought,
Yeah, that was, matter of fact, I won't say who or what, but property was purchased by the city, and there was some that wanted to take it away from the Historical Society, and actually Bud Emlinger and Avery Prophet, myself, and trying to think, Denny, there was about 14 originals that got the Historical Society started. We bought the building, and so that we put a sign up, Reading Historical Society, so it was more difficult to try to tear it down or take it away. So it's been there for a good 30 years.
Just put a new roof on it, and we're painting it, so we keep working on it.
Yep, belongs to the city.
Absolutely.
not only that, but they're working very diligently on Benson Street, doing a real good job, excellent job, I shouldn't say real good, excellent job.
They truly hustle.
Yeah, you look at the
Truly
pavers around the trees, they're nice and level, and
Glad to
Service
fix all the
department
curbs,
working very
too.
hard.
I
Right.
noticed they went and did all the curbing that needed to be done, and that was in the original ordinance that we hadn't passed. I don't know why I'm glad it's all finished. It looks beautiful, and we didn't lose the $144,000 community development block grant either. It got spent on that project.
Whose ward's that in?
Can I get stuff done?
Take care of that water.
Our apologies again to anybody that inconvenienced. It was on a short time frame that we found out we were going to do it. Our service department deserves a lot of credit in
They do.
getting curb work done before the paving was done. And anyway, even the folks at Valley Central, I think, who may have been hit the hardest, were very patient and appreciative, so.
Okay, any other business?
I do have a committee meeting next Tuesday at 6:30.
Yeah, and that was the main change for the latest, well, the only change for the latest minute update. So that's correct in the minutes now. Any other, Mr. Gertz?
Yeah, I think it would be appropriate. We've lost a good friend and citizen here, Mr. Ron Ashbrook, passed away in the last few days. His funeral was today, and I think he did suffer from COVID.
You mean Ron Schmidt?
I'm sorry, Ron Schmidt, not Ron Ashbrook. What am I saying? Yeah, it's Ronnie Schmidt.
Bob missed his
Yeah,
funeral.
that's right.
Tomorrow.
You got a cousin
Ronnie
named Ron?
Schmidt. But also, I wanted to comment, it was a good game. Reading had a couple bad mistakes they made at the Wyoming game, and they really should have pulled that one out. Bo's nephews played pretty well, and I'm proud of my grandson, and they've got a really good team. They worked very hard and got thought they were going to pull the game out, actually. but-
Katie had a son do very, very
Oh,
well.
that's right,
too.
I'm sorry.
Very well.
His dad played as well.
Yeah, you have a wonderful team this year, wonderful team. We had a wonderful opportunity, but extremely proud of those fine young men. They're incredible in what the effort they put in, and anyway.
I
proud
think
of
it's
them.
because of the religion I taught most of those boys.
You know something, Tony, they're still older boys to this day.
Yeah, they are. I see them at 3 o'clock.
What
Deeply
time is
religious.
a homecoming parade?
6 p.m.
6 o'clock, yes.
Yeah. The
Lee's
route's
Canyon
been
Park.
posted
Yeah.
by the school. I posted it earlier, so there will be some road closures on Friday for the parade.
Who are they playing Friday?
Madeira.
Yeah. Another big game.
Yeah, that's a big game.
It is.
You gotta get Madeira.
That's homecoming, I think.
Homecoming night.
That's what they say.
Big day in our city. But the parade starts at Koenig again at 6 o'clock, so there will be. I think they'll go from Koenig Park, up Columbia, Jefferson, to, down to Benson, Benson to Market, Market to the stadium, so.
Oh, I did have one other thing I wanted to mention, too. I'm really happy about, I compliment Bonnie and Jerry Rack and Tom and Sandy Harsh. They got their sign up. It's much nicer to look at the building with glass and a business and an art show than it was to see bricks there. When I go back to remember I saw Luger's Furniture in there and when we had retail sale, but looking forward to their great success. I compliment them what they've done, and they put up a beautiful sign that really is nice, well lit, and it's right in my neighborhood. I'm real pleased with it. And I think they owe a congratulations for a job well done.
And nothing short of incredible. Nothing short of incredible.
Okay, any other business? We will go to reading of our resolutions. First resolution.
A resolution accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the county auditor.
Motion to suspend the rules requiring its second, third reading.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Albrecht, seconded by Mr. Fischesser, to suspend the rule that requires a second and third reading. Roll call.
Mr. Powell?
Yes.
Mr. Gertz?
Yes.
Mr. Lynn?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
Mr. Lindeman?
Yes.
Mr. Fischesser?
Yes.
Mrs. Edichico?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Motion to adopt?
Second.
Discussion
Motion.
real quick,
Okay,
too, on this.
discussion.
I did check today, or was it yesterday, our budget has been certified effective September the 14th. We do not need a temporary appropriation. We shouldn't have needed one last year. It was also approved in September last year. So as we proceed through the end of the year, the Finance Committee should be working towards our permanent appropriation, hopefully in December, so we don't have to worry about waiting for a certification from the Budget Commission. It's already been approved as of September the 14th.
Okay. I have a motion from Ms. Edichico, seconded by Mr. Lindeman, to adopt this ordinance.
Resolution.
Resolution. Roll call?
Mr. Powell?
Yes.
Mr. Gertz?
Yes.
Mr. Lynn?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
Mr. Lindeman?
Yes.
Mr. Fischescher?
Yes.
Mrs. Edichico?
Yes.
That ordinance, that resolution is adopted, and resolution number?
2021-31. R. Okay. Resolution confirming the position of the Council of the City of Reading concerning recycling of disposable materials for the benefit of environmental improvements.
Motion to suspend the rules for the second and third reading.
I'll second the motion.
Who was that second?
Tony?
A motion by Mr. Lindeman, seconded by Mr. Gertz, to suspend the rule that requires a second and third reading for this resolution. Roll call?
Mr. Powell?
Yes.
Mr. Gertz?
Yes.
Mr. Lynn?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
Mr. Lindeman?
Yes.
Mr. Fischescher?
Yes.
Mrs. Edichico?
Yes.
That motion is passes.
Make a motion to adopt.
Resolution.
Resolution. Adopt.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Gertz, seconded by Mr. Lindeman, to adopt the
Quick
resolution.
discussion of why I drafted this. In our committee meeting, I don't know if Mr. Lindeman, it's his committee, came out of the meeting that there may be the potential that if the contract, we are going out for bids for garbage collection, and we are going to include recycling. I understand, that's what I'm told, for either 1 week, or once every week, or once every other week. But if neither of those are awarded or chosen, I'm concerned that we will give up the 900 or so people who are currently doing it and paying it through the city on a volunteer basis. I think we have 900, don't we, Don, or how many?
Roughly.
So I'm worried that, I don't want council to go on record and not supporting that. I did do some checking. It is a bit of a burden. I realize that on collecting it and putting up with it, but I think the least we need to do is maintain what we are already doing. And so I've talked to Mr. and Mrs. Ormond about this. We've gotten monies that are potentially out there for grants, and I don't want to be us in a position as a city council not supporting recycling, and so that's why it's there. So.
Okay. So I'll take a roll call. Again, I'll remind you that there was a motion made by Mr. Gertz, seconded by Mr. Lindeman for this resolution. Roll call?
Mr. Powell?
Yes.
Mr. Gertz?
Yes.
Mr. Lynn?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
Mr. Lindeman?
Yes.
Mr. Fischescher?
Yes.
Mrs. Edichico?
Yes.
The resolution is adopted. Resolution number?
2021-32.
Thank you, gentlemen. Young lady.
Okay.
First ordinance then.
Okay. Second reading, an ordinance amending the codified ordinances of the City of Reading, Ohio, by adding new section 660.17 entitled Unsolicited Written Materials to Chapter 660 entitled Safety, Sanitation, and Health.
Motion to suspend the third reading.
Second.
Motion made by Ms. Edichico, seconded by Mr. Lindeman to suspend the rule that requires a third reading. Is this with what you would expect, David?
Yeah,
Okay.
just some brief discussion on that. I did receive some feedback from the public, and it came back about 10-1 in favor of the ordinance. So that's of the people that contacted me. It's
I
about
know you had
10-1.
mentioned that you wouldn't mind it going 3 readings.
I wouldn't mind it
but-
going 3, but given the feedback I've received and stuff, I would not mind it going
Okay,
this evening.
I
okay.
do have one other. Dave, who's to enforce this? Who is expected to enforce it?
Are you asking me?
That's in section 2, so on the third page, section 2.
Okay, so the safety service director and the law director are gonna drive around?
No, but they are administering it. I'm not gonna tell them how to do their job. I'm just telling them it's their responsibility.
I'll ask Dave then. Is this a police matter, or?
This is it's a police ordinance, and it would be enforced the same as any litter violation would be enforced. And largely, it's going to be based upon,
Repeat
law
offenders and-
law enforcement tends to be reactive. So if you're getting this stuff in your yard and you don't want it, call them. I mean, the bottom line is that anybody with enforcement authority in the city would be allowed to enforce it.
And just from our point of view, just please remember, our police prioritize with calls, and availability and priority issues, so it's going to require patience for them. So, anyway, we'll do our best.
It's largely going to be a matter of education probably for the first year or so, Randy.
Kind of what I was talking to the mayor about. I said, if we could proactively send this to whoever the door store people
Well,
are that
certainly.
are throwing it.
And the bottom line is that, there are several offenders, and we know who they are. And the
Right.
bottom line is that education is going to precede the big
Enforcement.
stick.
And I do have some contact information, Randy, and it was my intention, once this was passed, to provide them with a copy of it.
That would be, yeah.
Maybe a first appropriate step.
Also, I was reminded today, too, that at least people who work here in the communities they're in, you can opt out of receiving door store yourself. So individually, people can make actions as well, that would help us tremendously here. If people don't want it, and they contact, at least from what I've been told, they can stop it being delivered from their home. And, a lot of people do like it and do like getting it. If we could get people to act again on their own and eliminate delivery to the homes that do not want it, I think it would go a long way towards helping our police department out with this.
Well, and frankly, that's one of the problems with enforcement and education, because no matter how many times you opt out, the guy who's getting paid the least at the door store is the one who's making the deliveries.
Right.
And he's not going to pick and choose which houses he throws the papers at. That's a problem. And, if it's going to be a matter of making sure they're aware of it and making sure that if people want to opt out, then that they can.
Mr. Lindeman.
I appreciate that, Mayor. I believe Dave mentioned at another meeting that he had a source where you could, and how to opt out.
Yeah, there's a contact, I don't have it off the top of my head right now, but I'd be willing to research that and share the information later.
But I think we did find, when we were talking about this, is that people had mentioned that they did opt out, but as Mr. Stevenson said, they're
It's
still
still
throwing it
secret.
at their lawn or in the street or wherever it lands, so it's not foolproof just to
No.
opt out,
Oh,
unfortunately.
No, it's not. It's just, again, we're going to need all the help. It's going to be a community-wide effort. I know our police, I've, mentioned the littering problem for years and years and years, and it continues to happen. So again, it's going to take all of us and as many people we can get to cooperate, to stop the source, the better off we're going to be.
Will the clerk go ahead and read back who made the motion for the suspension of the second and third?
Katie?
Mrs. Edichico and first, and Mr. Lindeman as second.
Okay. Then I'll take a roll call on that.
Mr. Powell?
Yes.
Mr. Gertz?
Yes.
Mr. Lynn?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
Mr. Lindeman?
Yes.
Mr. Fischescher?
Yes.
Mrs. Edichico?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Motion to adopt. Second.
Motion made by Mr. Lynn, seconded by Mr. Fischescher to adopt the ordinance for the, what is it for, unsolicited written material?
Yes.
Roll call?
Mr. Powell?
Yes.
Mr. Gertz?
Yes.
Mr. Lynn?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
Mr. Lindeman?
Yes.
Mr. Fischescher?
Yes.
Mrs. Edichico?
Yes.
That ordinance is adopted. Ordinance number?
2021-33. Okay. This is also a second reading.
Correct.
An ordinance authorizing the Safety Service Director to enter into a contract with the Village of Arlington Heights for police protection services and declaring an emergency.
Yeah, I think this is.
I'll make a motion to suspend the third reading.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Fischescher, seconded by Mr. Lynn to suspend the rule that requires a third reading. Roll call?
Mr. Powell?
Yes.
Mr. Gertz?
Yes.
Mr. Lynn?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
Mr. Lindeman?
Yes.
Mr. Fischescher?
Yes.
Mrs. Edichico?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Motion to adopt.
I'll second.
Motion made by Mr. Albrecht, seconded by Ms. Edichico to adopt the ordinance for the contract with the Village of Arlington. Roll call?
Mr. Powell?
Yes.
Mr. Gertz?
Yes.
Mr. Lynn?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
Mr. Lindeman?
Yes.
Mr. Fischescher?
Yes.
Mrs. Edichico?
Yes.
The ordinance is adopted, and the ordinance number?
2021-34.
And I want to thank our Safety and Services Director and our Police Chief and our Fire Chief. We have a similar contract for Fire EMS with Arlington. In an agreement that helps both communities, helps our departments, and things are going incredibly well. So anyway, my hat's off to them for making it work and putting all the hard work they did into this, and thankful to the Village of Arlington Heights as well, and they're great to work with, and it's something, again, that's worked out well for all of us, so thanks to everybody.
Mr. President,
Yes.
just for a note, in the agreement section, it says that we adopted this ordinance on 7/7/2021, and it should, of course, now read 7/21/21.
9/21/21?
Yeah, I guess it should be 9, huh?
And where did you see this?
It's in the second whereas, is that?
Oh, okay, it's in the actual,
Yeah.
Okay, but this is an
That-
ordinance tonight, that was the agreement? Is
right,
that-
right, so that's okay.
See, in the Village of Arlington.
That's
let's
when
see.
they passed it.
No,
No?
they did 823, I'm so sorry, I'll see where this.
Council of the City of Reading has adopted an
No, you're
ordinance
right.
that's regular meeting held on 7/7/2021. It should be, I guess it should be 9, right?
It should be September.
Yes, 9, you're right, Dennis.
So, but we didn't adopt it that night. That would have been 2 weeks ago, tonight.
That's correct.
So it should be
Just
21, right?
9/21/21.
9/21/21. You
Right.
were right.
Yeah.
I think we talked about that at the last meeting, that was just a
Patrick said he-
placeholder, wasn't it?
Yeah, Patrick wasn't, he'd like to see 3 readings. He didn't have a problem with that, and we just probably didn't do it last time, and so it should just change that to 2021, or
It's the old-
9/21/21.
It's the old teacher in me.
You got the R's, you got the 20.
That's 2. He's going for the trifecta here. See, he has one more ordinance to do it on.
Did we do anything?
You better read that thing fast.
They already passed it, correct?
Okay.
Yeah, I guess we're already done. Sorry, Dennis. Can't get the trifecta.
Pass it, or do we suspend the rules?
I think it was Mr., who made a motion to adopt it?
Me?
Mr. Albrecht, and then Mrs. Edichico?
Yeah.
It's adopted.
And I think we went through and got the number. Well, the number was what, 35?
2021-34.
34, okay. That was the Arlington one. Okay, next one.
Okay. An ordinance authorizing an agreement with Duke Energy Ohio, DEO, granting a release for right-of-way, ROW, restoration and declaring an emergency.
Motion to suspend the rules for the third reading.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Lindeman, seconded by Mr. Fischescher to suspend the rule that requires a third reading for this ordinance. Roll call?
Mr. Powell?
Yes.
Mr. Gertz?
Yes.
Mr. Lynn?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
Mr. Lindeman?
Yes.
Mr. Fischescher?
Yes.
Mrs. Edichico?
Yes.
That motion passed.
Motion to adopt.
Second.
Discussion real quick.
Yes, go ahead.
The Safety Service Director is not here, but I'm just making sure, Mayor, that this is, I tried to look through it today. We got the paperwork, I know, on this last week, but all the numbers came through, I think, maybe yesterday before I looked at them. Have this, I'm assuming, got to be careful with that word, you know how it's spelled. So I want to make sure, are we getting our well worth out of what we're doing with this proposal, I guess? because we're going to be doing, the way I understand it, when I look through it, we're actually going to be receiving enough additional cash to maybe pay both sides of the parkway of Third Street. Does that sound correct?
I don't think that's the case.
No,
I think he's adding that as a possibility.
I knew that they were adding it to their work, but are we going to get enough money? I know that we talked about the fact that we're going to be expanding the installation of more water mains, which I agree. And we already put new water mains down Third Street some years ago for the development of the old Nivison property.
that was from Benson heading south.
Right, this is
Correct.
Benson to Mechanic.
This is
Yes, this
to
is
mechanics,
Benson
so,
Mechanic.
it sounds to me that it's a good deal in the end of the.
Oh, it's a
It
very
is.
good
I
deal.
think
You've done all
Excellent
the
deal.
numbers, and I'm sure that's the case. Is that true?
Yeah.
Right, we
And it's
talked
going to end
about,
up, you know,
instead
a new
of,
8-inch water main where there was a 3-inch water main. All the curbing's going to be done, where Duke was responsible, I think, for 1,100 feet of it. It's going to be a much better project.
They're paving it curb to curb, I think.
And what about the
Where they-
lead lines to the houses? I thought that
They're
was
going,
an
they're gonna
option,
do
too.
something with that with the neighbors or the people, the lead lines, is that correct?
That I do have to double check
Well,
as a part of
that's
this.
after it's contracted, and then we'll talk to the contractor about talking to the property owners about doing
That's what I understood, yeah, thank you.
So they can opt in and pay for it
Right.
themselves?
Well, the bottom line is that probably within the next 10 years, that's gonna be mandated anyway,
Right.
Right, but I mean, we're
so,
following,
yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of grant dollars are headed that way to do that. So, you know, that'll be a part of the process for us is to apply for those grants. It's going to be,
Mr.
right,
Lindeman?
Duke Energy was only responsible for certain pieces of the curb, not the whole curb. And
Exactly.
Right.
exactly.
Thinking ahead,
I think
it's gonna
about
be
a
a much
third.
better project by doing all the curbs instead of
Yes.
just here and there.
Well, Lord knows, maybe they won't win the lawsuit. Ah, that's a knee slapper.
I'm
I
very
wish I could
excited
give
about
you
the
an
water
update
main.
on that, Tony, I
Hey,
really do.
That's,
3-inch
Wish I could
8-inch.
give you an
that's
update on that.
unbelievable,
Yes,
yeah.
absolutely.
Another
It'll be worth the wait.
question?
Definitely.
I'm kind of curious if there's some wood mains under there. I think
Wood?
Fourth Street, there's some, not being used, but still in the ground.
Mr. Albrecht?
It's done as well.
Mr. Albrecht?
Mayor Duke is still going to be doing all the other areas that they.
Absolutely.
This is just for the Third Street.
Just for Third Street again because of the water main.
Right.
A little bit of mechanic though, right? There was a little bit of mechanic.
Yeah, yeah, a little bit of
Third Street,
mechanic.
And I don't know, was there a little bit of Voorhees too? I thought I saw some on there
It
for
says
Voorhees.
something about a little bit of ours, yeah.
Okay.
Not the water main.
Okay. Okay, I got a motion made by Ms. Edichico, seconded by Mr. Lindeman to adopt the ordinance. Roll call?
Mr. Powell?
Yes.
Mr. Gertz?
Yes.
Mr. Lynn?
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes.
Mr. Lindeman?
Yes.
Mr. Fischescher?
Yes.
Mrs. Edichico?
Yes.
The ordinance is adopted in the ordinance number.
2021-35.
35.
Any other business? This meeting is adjourned. Mic's on. Okay. I'd like to go ahead and open the council meeting of the whole for the city of Reading. Anybody want to start? Go right ahead. Ms. Gertz, did you have something or anything?
Well, yeah, I'll bring up something.
Okay.
Two things that concern me. Mr. and Ms. Orman here tonight, I don't know if they would be willing to, because I read the letter that you sent to the mayor, a copy of it. Could you, I'd like to know more about the grants that are out there. I think I read in there, you could get up to $100,000 potentially on recycling and so forth. Can you enlighten me a little more? Yes, please.
Yes.
So there's actually two different issues that are going on with recycling in the city right now, and this is probably good for the residents to hear this because on social media, I've definitely seen some confusion. So we have one grant through Hamilton County, and that's for our city being awarded Target Recycling City of the Year. And that is potentially up to $70,000. And that is depending on our efforts and, how we demonstrate our needs. This was through, you had Gage Bradford here several weeks ago that talked about the target city. That's through Hamilton County, and I know, those of us in We Thrive have potentially talked about a lot of that money being used to outfit recycling in all of our parks, Hayfie Fieldhouse, the stadium, et cetera. And there's a resident here who's actually trying to work on some really good prices for recycling cans that could be part of our stadium and in our parks. And so that's one issue, and that issue happens regardless of how we handle or choose to handle our curbside recycling issue. And thank you guys so much for at least keeping our recycling as is. I think we have 900 subscribers now who will not drop out. And as I posted in the letter, my wife and I are willing to be of help in the office if we can do it from home or whatever to help your office staff, with those subscriptions. We can be we can make phone calls to Rumpke and whatnot or whatever, be some kind of liaison for the city. Now, the second is if, and this is an only if, the city adopts full city residential curbside recycling, can we get another grant through an organization called Recycling Partnership of America, I believe, something like that. And they fund at least a majority of the startup costs for a curbside recycling program. And it's somewhere, I want to say it's somewhere between $75,000 and $100,000 off the top of my head. I'd have to double check. But that essentially would give us an option of the city buying the recycling carts instead of Rumpke. Technically, part of the bid you would get through Rumpke is cart rental, essentially. The city could buy those carts, tell the residents that the cart belongs to the house when you come and go, and our bid then for the actual cost of curbside recycling could be adjusted somewhere in the neighborhood of, I believe, 75 cents to $1 possibly for the cost of the actual cart itself. But again, that can't even be applied for until such time as, council has passed a full residential curbside recycling program. At the least, if we keep our subscription-based recycling, we won't be able to use that second grant. But that first grant from Hamilton County will at least get great infrastructure and education out to the residents about using recycling in our parks, at our stadium, at Hayfie Fieldhouse, et cetera. And again, my wife and I will even be willing to help with that. we really thoroughly enjoyed Friday at that Wyoming-Reading football game, you know, collecting all that recycling and getting it out to the bin there. And part of that Hamilton County grant could also possibly pay for a recycling bin to be placed at your city garage facility. I can't think of the name of the street that that's on, but you could technically put a recycle bin in there, and if, you know, the workers, you know, are bringing back something from the park, they can dump that recycling there instead of having to go all the way down to Hafey. Now, you know, as I also mentioned in that letter about, you know, the full curbside recycling program, you know, a lot of money will kind of shift directions. You know, I don't know exactly what the city pays for all those bins down at Hafey, but if you got curbside recycling, you really only need enough of those bins down there all of a sudden now to maybe, you know, take care of those residents who are in apartment buildings that can't initially be served by having a cart per se. So, you know, a couple different grant opportunities, and, you know, my wife and I are certainly willing to work really hard on them. I know a lot of members of We Thrive are very interested in working on that. And I think that, you know, with everything that's exciting going on with that property being developed and us having the absolute, I think, best, you know, public school facility and even, you know, the best private school, you know, for the ladies here in Reading, just a lot of exciting things to happen. I will also tell you, my wife and I are busting our butts, and then a lot of other people in the Walk with a Purpose are out cleaning this city and places you probably don't even know it's being cleaned. I mean, God bless my wife, hiked virtually every foot up and down Benson, taking out probably 25 years worth of stuff. We've done it on Hunt Road. We spent our Saturday cleaning the entire interchange at Ridge Road and Ronald Reagan.
I saw that.
I mean, it is
Good job.
sparkling now. And that's how my vision is for Reading to present itself that way at every entrance and exit point, you know, coming into the city. And, you know, I have visions, we all have visions, but clean is huge. I think young couples, young families that want to come and live in Reading, you know, they're going to say, you've got recycling, that's exciting, and pretty much every community around us does. So, you know, I'm looking forward to things. You guys, you were 2 for 2 tonight, that unsolicited, you know, materials, that is going to clean up the city, I think, relatively quickly. So I appreciate everything that you guys did tonight for the city.
Mr. Chico.
One thing about the second grant that you discussed, Sabrina had brought this up at the Bridal District meeting with the businesses that were there, is one thing we can get through that grant would be a bin for the businesses in the district and, well, throughout the city really, for recycling. Obviously, a lot of their waste is cardboard, and all of that right now is going into the landfill because they have no place to put it, and they get boxes of dresses
daily.
Oh, yeah, daily. So
And
they
we're-
were very excited to hear that they could have a way to recycle.
And we're just in an absolute, this e-generation, this e-commerce generation we're in, it's just an entirely different waste stream. And, you know, I had never been to that Murph recycling plant. I was part of that tour, and just to see that volume of cardboard come in there. And, you know, what I learned, you know, what we learned that day is that cardboard can be used up to 7 times before the fibers are too weak to use again. Plastic 2 to 3 times. Glass and aluminum are infinite recycling. And, you know, I just believe that these are, you know, God's resources given to us as human beings. And for us to be using them one time and burying them in Coleraine Township just doesn't make a lot of sense. So, you know, we thank you for your support tonight for sure.
Well, thanks, Pat, and also, I understand if we were more aggressive about keeping track of what we collect at these other bins, and so I know we lost a couple of years there, we didn't do a proper application, but I think we were getting about 3,000 a year, Don, does that sound 3,000 or 4,000? So I think if you explained to me one time, we were more aggressive about what we all are collecting. And
so here's something that Reading does very, very well, and, you know, God bless the Public Service Department. You get kickbacks for reporting all of the poundage of, or however they measure it, all the leaves, all the tree branches, everything you keep out of the Rumpke landfill at Colerain Township has some kind of little kickback from the county. And, you know, Blue Ash, they're a little showmany, but, you know, God bless them, 67%, you know, they're claiming a 67%, you know, keeping stuff out of the landfill, while Reading's in the neighborhood of 8%. But they fill out all the forms for everything they recycle, all their leaves, all of their, you know, tree branches, probably miscellaneous appliances. I mean, I don't even know everything that's on the list that you can report and get a little something back. So $3,000, $4,000, or $5,000 we're getting back, you know, we could use it to, you know, lower people's rates, maybe have a recycling assistance fund for our most needy families in the city. I mean, there's stuff you can do with that. You know, let's get it.
Mr. Lindeman.
Couple of things. One, the 7 bins down at Havey Fieldhouse, it's included in the recycling bid, but it's not broken out as far as how much money they're charging us. I'm sure it's not free, but it's not listed as a separate charge. So if we reduce the number of those, I'm sure that there is a minimal savings. Last year, we did 4,000 yards of waste recycling, limbs that are chopped up and leaves and so on and so forth. They do an excellent job. They really do. I don't think that 4,000 yards was counted, unfortunately. But what Darrell and his crew have done is they have traded some of the chips that they collect, and they trade that for treated mulch that they can use around the city.
Nice. And I guess the one thing I noted was that in the second one, when we write that ordinance, if we write it so that we can start as a rental, sounds like we have to rent those bins to start the next contract. But we should put in there that we can get out after 6 months or a year if we can get the funding from your other grant to get bins from that.
Yes, I was talking to Dean Ferrier from Rumpke, and, you know, this is nothing written in stone for sure, but I asked him that exact same thing. I said, you know, he had recommended that probably be put in the bid contract, but, you know, let's be honest, none of us knew that. But he said there's still probably a likelihood that while you may keep the rental agreement, that the Partnership for America could still send you a check that you would have otherwise gotten, and then you would deposit it into your waste removal fund or whatever. So, I mean, the money, I don't think it necessarily has to go directly to like the manufacturer or Rumpke. I think you can have it and still, you know, maybe reduce the rate to the residents a little bit. Again, not in stone, but we'd have to read all the fine print for sure.
Yeah.
That's part of the reason why we started on this relatively early. I think the last time we did this contract, it was a pretty rushed thing, and we didn't have much time to really think about it. But this time we have a little more time, and if we get the bids back and we can vote upon it, then we'll know exactly where we stand, and we may be able to go out to get that grant.
That grant, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But at the least, thank you for keeping our 900 subscribers. And if my wife and I can be of service to the city in any way to help your office staff, please let us know.
I would ask you to run for council, only I'm afraid you give up this job.
And actually, I'd like to thank you at least as much as you've been thanking us, that's for sure. Any other? And you guys said you had a second. How about Mr. Albrink?
I don't know if anybody else had
Mr. Albrink has something.
The mayor just asked me to report that Lita will be starting to saw the street up on Thornridge for the water department at the end of next week.
Okay.
So that'll be proceeding.
Just before the end of the month. I guess that would be maybe the end of the month.
Yeah. It's
October 1st is that Friday. Anyone else?
The
No, I-
street for the
Go
Go ahead, Don.
ahead, Mr. Lindeman.
water line. on
Probably at the next report
Saw
meeting,
cut.
we'll have more information on, I've checked into how the new water meters are working and, you know, the savings that we're able to see Hopefully, we'll have that information, be able to report on it our next meeting, that reportable meeting.
Okay. And is that like, do you know if that's like 99 or 100% of the city's been changed over, or?
Last time I actually had a conversation with Patrick, there was only a handful of people or businesses that have not been changed over. So I would assume
We're there.
Pretty
with
close
this
to it,
time, yeah, should be done.
Okay.
Didn't he mention that once that
I thought he did, yeah. That it was
completed switching?
finished now.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're there. Mr. Kurtz, you had something else?
Yes, I do, I have a great concern for this. And of course, you know, it's probably a touchy subject, but I'm very concerned, it's in my ward, about the former school property, or the former buildings that were all torn down, that school property, that whole block of Hawker, Mechanic, Bonnell, and Jefferson. You know, I brought it up, and of course, some were saying, well, you know, it's a school's property, you know, city doesn't have anything to say about it, or shouldn't be participating in the question, but it is in my ward, and not only is it in my ward, but I'm concerned about valuation of my property. I've lived on the same block my whole life, so I don't plan on leaving the second ward regardless, and I realize that the property belongs to the school, but there's so many things going around. I think it would behoove us, I don't believe we ended up in some conflict over the wiring, but other than that, I mean, we made a lot of adjustments and working with the school on the PDD for the development of a new school. We made adjustments on setbacks and so forth, or to accommodate the building so it could be on that property that would not have been necessarily given to potentially other users of that tract of land. And it's a beautiful school, and I'm glad we have it. I've got kids I taught that go there. I taught elementary school myself, and I taught in college as well, business law. So it's not like I'm opposed to education. I work in the field. I have worked in the field. But I am concerned, and I've talked to some of the residents and adjacent to this property. I never want to see it go to something that would be some type of multifamily dwelling, high-rise of some sort, or certainly something that would be a value that would decrease the other values in the neighborhood. So I think we need to open the door and find out. I mean, I've heard scuttlebutt. Maybe Mrs. Edichico, you seem to have a lot of contacts with the school and the school board. I'm sorry the mayor left, because I was going to ask him. He has a lot of relatives that are with the school. But I was scuttlebutt that they may have to build another another elementary school there, because the school they're in may not be large enough for, have you heard that?
I heard that rumor, yeah.
And that kind of concerns me, to say the least. And so I think it would be valuable. I'm told, well, they got too many irons in the fire and they've got a lot on their plate. Well, like we don't either. You know, we got a lot of things going, and I would like to find out at least what kind of future, if they have any, what their goals are. There's this controversy about the stadium and what's going on with the stadium, and you know, what can be done. They can't get a turf field unless the school owns it. There was one of our guys that are running with us that commented that, you know, we'll give them the stadium, they give us this property. So I don't know, I'd like to open the door and start some discussion and find out what's going on. I don't know how the rest of the council members feel. I know what I'm going to do, and I've already done it, and I have it in my hand. I'm going to get an appraisal of the property, and I'm going to know what it's worth. And I'm going to at least know for myself as not only a resident in my community, but as a councilman, probably more so as a resident, because I don't want to see my property value go down. I'm sure Mrs. Edichico doesn't either. Her mother lives within a block of that place. So I think it behooves us to at least start having some discussions. Maybe have the school board go up to their place, or they can come down here again. We did this when we were negotiating about the use of, you recall that, when we negotiated about the rental of the stadium and the use of the stadium. You know, the stadium at one time, the stadium actually is owned by the city. We acquired it way back in the 1940s, and the stadium actually, the current concrete structure was all built by the city of Reading, I can't remember, I was younger at one time, my recollection was we spent $300,000 to $500,000 to build that facility at the time, back in the middle 60s, when my father was mayor back then, of course. But the whole thing that comes into fruition, though, is, I have no problem trying to work with it, but years ago, there were many people that used the stadium. You had St. Peter and Paul, you had Sacred Heart, you had Mount Notre Dame, you had the Reading Little Leaguers, you had numerous other organizations in the city and churches and athletic groups that use the stadium. Presently, we really only have one, which is the Reading Schools. So I think we ought to, we worked out this TIF now, finally. We ought to be able to work with the school and talk to them. But this concerns me about this property. I want to find out what it's worth. I have my own idea about it. My own idea would be to maybe if they're, whatever they're going to do, I don't know if they're going to put ball fields or whatever their goals are, but I'd like to see some new homes or maybe land dominiums put in there. I talked to my appraiser today, and that could be a very valuable. They're doing this over in Laughlin. They're selling homes over there, over on the far side of Laughlin, in an area they had some land and sold it to a developer. They're going for $250,000 a piece. So whether it's a land dominium or some 50 by 125, 150 foot properties, you probably could put 15 or 18 properties in there. And so anyway, I think we need to do this as a council to look for the future of how this property is going to be used. I'm not a hypocrite or a liar. I'm concerned because I live very close to it, So I don't know how any of the others feel about trying to open up some discussion. Don?
Mr. Lindeman.
The school put out literature saying that they're going to work very closely with the city on that property. Just in deference to what you said about they have a lot of irons in the fire. I assume that when those irons get smaller in number, that they will approach the city and talk to them about that property, because they said they're going to work very closely with the city. I assume that's council.
Okay.
Is that not zoned education?
Yeah, I was going to ask about that.
Well, when it was developed way back, I think in 1890, 1880s, it was dedicated, I think it was Blunt's second edition to Laughlin and Reading. I used to be a title examiner, by the way. I wasn't there at the time, so I don't want anybody to try to use that against me. But I remember doing title work, and I came across that, and it was dedicated as part of the subdivision when they developed it way back in the 1800s. However, the school then wanted to own it as its own property. It was dedicated as a school block, and they do that. Sometimes developers, we have parks that have been dedicated in certain portions of town and subdivision because they're really fallow land. They can't use them. I'm not going to go where they are, but I know where they are. But anyway, that property was dedicated as school, but they sold it to the school. I had a title exam run too at my own expense.
They did.
I looked it up, and you got it when you did your work too. But I was told that it was supposed to be given to the school. It belonged to the Kiwanis, and I think, and the mayor stated that he would like to just give the school the property, but it was acquired. I'm talking about the stadium. The stadium. No, I'm sorry. The stadium was acquired by the city through the fireworks, but this property was dedicated as a school property, but it was then sold to the school. I don't remember the number. Wasn't a whole lot of money today. It was probably $10,000, something like that, the whole block. But to say that it's zoned strictly to be used for school, I don't believe that we couldn't make an adjustment to that.
Yeah, but if it's zoned for school now, then no one can really change its zoning except the city.
Correct.
So if we just sit on it as a school, then we've got power to, once other people want to come in.
We're being mean people again.
When the school wants to go ahead and do something with it, they're going to be looking for the city to make some changes.
Well, that was kind of my thought, was that, the school would eventually have to come to us
Right.
if they wanted to do something other than
Than a school.
Oriented.
And Dave, have
I
you
would
looked
like
into
to
these?
move it along a
do you
little
know
quicker
all
than
the
wait, because,
zoning rules for that
you
piece of
know,
property?
I realize you
agree.
guys live up in
It's
Boardwalk
zoned
and
for
Park Place.
school
I
and
just lived out here over Bonneville.
I think it's not a big deal until they want to do something with it.
Well, I think you could open the door. There's a lot of growth that could happen there. There could be, like I said, 15 to 18 very nice homes built there. Would improve the value of all the people in the neighborhood. It would be or somebody else said, there's discussion about wanting to build a new city hall. There's discussion about a recreation center. I mean, it kind of struck me as odd. You heard the same scuttlebutt about having to build another school. I thought, well, that didn't sound too correct to me.
I think if the city council wants to try to do something, we should try to buy it from the school and
I
then
have
do it
no
ourselves.
problem with that.
So maybe
I
we
already
should be
got an
talking about
appraisal
that.
on it, so I'm willing to negotiate that. I'm with them.
I mean,
Yeah.
if you want to control what's going to
I
happen
like the
there.
land swap personally. I'd like to see us give them the stadium and they can do with it what they want to do. I mean,
Sounds like there's 3 or 4 options we have right now to move forward with, so.
Well,
And it
we're
is.
not getting anywhere
I
unless
mean,
we
they
talk.
are right. They are right that, the only way that that stadium can get grants and financial help is if the school owns it. If the
I've
city-
never seen
know
that,
that.
though. I've only
We've
heard
known that for
scuttlebutt
years.
about that. Have you ever
That's
saw
true.
it put in writing? No, I've never seen it in writing any way, shape, or form. When I heard the
We
Deer
made
Park.
I
got
know
it
the
all.
Bangles are that.
Yes. We
Helped
phone calls
over in
years
Deer
ago.
Park is a scuttlebutt, but Billy Cunningham graduated from there, and I heard he ponied up a lot of the dough too, to do Deer Park. So I don't know the answers. I'd like to know the answers. I guess we would know the answers if the school board has some evidence on it, sit down and say, yeah, we know we can get a turf stadium there if we own the property. And I'll say, like you just said, swap the properties. I don't have any problem with that. But here we are talking about it, and the mayor left, and service director's not here. Those are the people that seem to have the most
Well,
communication with the school.
I think you're the only one that's really looking to make a commitment to something. I don't think we can do anything until they want to do something with it, or we approach them and try to buy it.
As of right now, last I have heard is there are no plans.
No plan. So, I mean,
Well,
Mr.
now's the
Lindeman.
time to open the door.
Mr. Lindeman, did you have something?
Just that new business discussions referring to committees by motion and assigned by majority vote. I mean, this sounds like something you can put into committee.
Sure. I could.
Utilities, buildings, and lands.
Yeah. I'd throw it back in that committee. He's not doing anything anyway.
No.
I'll teach you to.
Yeah.
Right with the,
I
right with
tell
the
you,
bridal
I know
committee.
I know we do this.
I
we
know
put-
it doesn't come under safety.
we put these things into
Comes
committees
under
and you get three
finance.
people, and
There you go, finance. It could come
Yeah.
under pretty much, they turn it into a park and it'd be Tom Lynn.
Yeah, there's a thought.
the trouble is.
He's kind of idle during the winter.
We could move the safety service, whole bunch of them over there. Now it's under Dennis.
But, if you put it in a committee, then it always comes back to this is the most valuable discussion we can have.
Sure,
You got
I mean,
everybody here on the same subject and you got to get everybody in the same room to talk
Don
about
just
it.
wants to have another committee meeting.
Pardon?
Don just wants to have another committee
He wants
meeting.
to add another committee to his
I'm just
resume.
suggesting that because I don't think if a
I don't
small
think
group
it's-
of
I don't
committee
think
goes
we-
to the
it's
school and talks to
moot.
them about
It's
it,
moot.
we're gonna do
I
a
don't
whole
think
lot
there's
more
nothing to
damage
talk about.
ourselves.
Well, we can always invite a member of the school board here. I mean,
We could invite them here to find out what we could do to help them
right.
prepare for the future.
That would be the
And that's
quickest
about
way
all
to
we could
get
do.
some answers to these questions.
Any other business?
Just bringing up the stadium, I mean, I personally would like to be out of the stadium business.
Amen.
I would too.
I think that's more of a school district thing, and
Amen.
I understand how we got where we are. I guess the real question is, does the school board, even have the capacity or capability at this time to take that on, or where are they at? So maybe that ought to be the first question to be asked of them before we, start going down this rabbit hole. That are they even in a position where we could, they could even talk about this? So
I might extend an invitation to the school to come to our next council of the whole meeting at the end of October. I'm not sure exactly what that date is. And maybe
Be the
we can at least
19th.
bring some of these dates up. 19th?
Yeah. I won't be here, by the way.
Okay. I was gonna,
I did
I was gonna
wanna-
ask you to be president.
do
I have
wanna
surgery on the
announce that,
20th, so.
Oh. Go
I
ahead.
will have a second ward advisory committee meeting next week, so I hope that some of the citizens will see fit to come. I'd like to open the door and see what my residents think
That's the
about.
28th?
Yep, 7:30.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, gathering anything you want to, I mean, everybody can come with an idea if the school will come that second Tuesday or third Tuesday in October. We can just sit and give them ideas and they can bank them for the future.
There you
All
go.
right.
All right. Anything else?
I won't be here in 2 weeks, not that y'all will miss me, but
I'll miss you.
I'm gonna go visit the mouse.
Gus, you had a question?
Again? Man, you get down to the mouse a lot, don't you?
Oh, no.
Yeah,
Yes, she does.
No, I do not.
Yes, she
I thought so too, Dennis. It seemed like,
Shush.
Does the council have any problem with Mr.?
No.
Okay.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Justin Feldman, 1415 Market Street. All I wanted to say, you were talking about the stadium and what we ought to get out of that business, we ought to get rid of that property. The only thing I'd like you to think about is what if down at the old more property's value is going to
Something other than
you guys discuss this too small. Build that,
yes.
that's just that's getting that kind of interest.
in that if the school
Bring up some really good. Then, nothing else, this meeting of the council of the whole is adjourned.